We're going to talk about really interesting topics, and I guess for everyone that is here too, that it's labels, certifications, metrics, and setting labels has been super controversial, especially lately. As human, we love putting labels, and there's a duality here. They can serve to help us digest more information, understand the reality, sometimes a very complex reality as we've seen, but they can also set some kind of divisions and separations between good or bad, and drawing those lines is super difficult. As CrowdFarming, we lived it when we decided to only work with organic farmers or farmers in conversion to organic, and that's a difficult decision because, as we saw with Yannick, with Alfonso, not always being organic means being sustainable and the other way around, right? However, in pursuing transparency and scalability, you have to make some compromises, and some of this is putting labels to things so people can understand and process information. So it is also a costly process. A lot of people are saying, okay, I'm not going to get the certification. You know this, José, with organic. You know this, Maria, with B Corp, right? It's costly and it's a painful process. So we're here today. We talk about 3 different companies that help us or organizations that help us digest this information and set labels, set metrics that help us process this information. We have Anna. Anna is the co-founder and co-CEO of BCome. She graduated in architecture and has more than 10 years of experience working with startups. She was in the founding team of Trip for Real, who was acquired by Airbnb. In 2016, she created BCome together with Alba, which is a fashion consultancy that ended up becoming a platform for global sustainability management that it's today. In BCome, Anna is responsible for international sales and business development. We're here with Maria. Maria is head of communications and community engagement in BLab Europe. I'm sure a lot of you here either know B Corp or are underlying the process of being audited by B Corp. She has been broadcasting business as a force of good and accelerating the B Corp movement across Europe. And she has spent almost a decade overseeing international strategy for global clients ranging renewable energy companies to sportswear brand. She has translated now the creative problem solving from the agency world to the nonprofits. And lastly, we have José here, who is head of sustainable agriculture in Ecosert, with more than 20 years of experience in the field. Assessing sustainable practices for farmers in many countries and crops around the world, now working a lot, and we've been discussing this a lot, on regenerative agriculture and how to certify it. So let's start with this very complex topic, that it's information labeling. So first of all, I would like to start first for you, Anna, that you were the founder of this company, and for you discussing about the organization you work with. What was the confusion that drove to having the need for, in your case, regenerative agriculture? We've heard a bit about this. In your case, for B Corp, and in your case, for those metrics that help the consumer digest, is this a sustainable brand or is this not?
Okay, well, thank you so much for having, on this panel. I think that was great to have also the panel before, all the panels, but I think that we will talk about all the same topics. But for us, BCome, as you mentioned, right now we are a software and we help the fashion brands to understand which are the impacts behind their products, not just their products, also all of those impacts in each stage of the supply chain. So before creating this software, we were a consultancy. We travel a lot to India, to Bangladesh, to Pakistan, and actually working directly with fashion brands like Inditex or CNA. And then we realized that they don't need any more products on the market because there are amazing products on the market, but the professionals, the designers, and the buyers, and even the customers, they couldn't understand why one product were more or less sustainable. And this is why we stopped the consultancy, we stopped selling, we stopped working with Inditex and CNA, and we create our own methodology that is based on on the ESO that help the professionals to understand which are the impacts for these products. And this is why we decide to switch everything just to make sustainability easy, more tangible, and help the professionals to choose better decisions, and at the same time communicate on the easy way to the final customers. As for example, I see that you are wearing EcoAlf, we are measuring all of those impacts, and Francois, that it's the panel that we will have later, how we can help all of those brands to get access.
In fact, we got to know each other because I called you like, Anna, can you bring this to our business?
Not
I
yet.
hope really soon you can expand to
Not
agri-food and we can work together.
Cool.
Maria.
I mean, I can talk about BLab. BLab was founded back in 2006 by 3 of our co-founders. With this, we started the day today talking about how the current economic system is broken, and businesses are in large part responsible for those rising inequalities, for the climate crisis in many ways. And so, but there's also this belief that businesses can be a core part of the solution. So you started seeing the emergences of business for good probably over 2 decades ago. But then there's also this kind of challenge that if a founder that's really purpose-driven leaves the company, or if there's an economic crisis, or if there's COVID, then sometimes you see companies reverting to the other pressures of the industry or society or the demand. So how do you really kind of embed purpose in a company in a lasting way? The 3 co-founders of BLab decided that we needed a framework that allowed businesses to compare apples to apples across all industries, but also to find a way to truly embed purpose into a company, regardless of who the founder is. So by encouraging companies to change the way that the company is, like the corporate structure and the legal articles of the company. So I think Marta mentioned today the shift from shareholder primacy to stakeholder governance. And really looking at a business's impact, not just its emissions, or not just looking at one specific industry, but what's a business's impact across all of its stakeholders? How does it treat its workers? What's its impact and benefit to its customers? What's its impact in the communities in which it operates in? How does the way the business is governed have an impact? So BLab created this framework over 17 years ago to help businesses navigate that.
Super. We are part of collaborating with them.
Yes.
So in the case of Ecosert, it's one of the pioneers in organic certification worldwide. Today there are around 27 offices and mostly working for organic certification. I'm not working in organic certification. I'm taking care of those farmers that are with more challenges to arrive there and help them on the transition. The transition may happen through labels or seals related with sustainability. Some of you may know Global Gap or Rainforest Alliance are the most known. But in the last year and a half, couple of years, we are paying a lot of attention to regeneration. And I think Alfonso was explaining a bit, and Yannick, about what they do in La Jonquera. It is we see as a tool of transformation, and being conscious of how difficult it is for some farmers to transform the conventional practices to organic, the cost that this has, the transition period on all these challenges. We see that as an alternative, and we are trying to get as far as we can.
Thank you. Next one, I'm going to head to Maria, and I'm going to, this one I'm letting you know might be a bit tough, but once you set the standards of what is good, right, for such a broad thing that it's all businesses in the world, you're kind of becoming the target of criticism, because some companies that we might see as not as good, or a lot of companies that are entering the market to an industry to transform it, suddenly some kind of verification says someone you don't admire is kind of okay, right? Let's say, okay, you have some points, but they are B Corp. And you kind of say, I might not be part of this club that is going to have this organization. And you automatically become the target of a lot of criticism. What's your experience and your point of view regarding this?
Yes, I think we've talked about, thank you for the question, because I think it's one that comes up all the time. And And I think we've talked about it a lot today. If we want to change the economic system, we need to find ways to bring everybody along. It's not enough to just recognize a small group of niche companies and exclude others from who are part of the problem to become a part of the solution. But it is kind of a challenge of perception, and we do get criticism. As we see the movement become more mainstream, there's also more scrutiny around the companies that are a part of that. And so it's this inflection point of if you want to make more impact, you need to work with more businesses, but the more businesses you work with, the higher risk there is. So I think for us, one thing that's important for people to understand is we see certification, all certifications, as the beginning of the journey and also as a framework for continuous improvement. It doesn't mean that a company is perfect. And I think what it does is it provides a company a framework to measure and understand where their impact is today, where they can improve, and hold them accountable to also not just through the framework, but also through the community. Like we often see that our B Corp community are the harshest critics in kind of challenging other members, challenging each other, but also wanting to work together with each other to find better solutions. I don't think we'll ever please everybody. And we're currently in the process of actually evolving our standards as well. So looking at, what does it mean to be a good business? So how do you kind of continue to raise that bar and both help businesses on that journey, but also help educate the general public what that means? So it's an ongoing process.
Next one's for you, Anna. I heard that you you work with EcoAlf, you work with Infinite Athletics, you work with companies that are new entrants in the market and they have a really strong purpose to change things. Mm-hmm. But sometimes when you are, as I said, a new entrant that are here to change things, you can get carried away by setting your own label of I'm the challenger and I'm the good guy, and maybe fall into complacency and say I'm not going to measure what I'm doing or get a certification because I know I'm changing things, I know I'm doing things well. What would be your advice to them on you need to carry on with this journey, you need to keep on measuring, you need to track your impact, you need to get certified and whatsoever?
Well, I think that it's easy. I mean, you cannot improve if you don't know in which area you should improve. So I think that be brave and be transparent to yourself to understand in which stage of the supply chain you could, I don't know, maybe it's the raw material, maybe it's the wet processes that you are using, or it's the transportation, the packaging that we talk on the other round table. Or sorry, I think that we will talk tomorrow. But it's just to be transparent. I mean, of course, our tool allows the brand to understand that data. We also offer the option to communicate to the final customers, but this is optional. We have some brands that they are doing the analysis with us, but they don't communicate anything. It's up to the brand. But for me, I really wish that all the brands having that exercise just to understanding, not about company, because again, no, any company is perfect, but for each project, each product that they wanted to sell or they wanted to create or they wanted to produce. So I think that it's important to have this view about the product.
And what has been your experience with the incumbents of the fashion industry? Have you had conversations with them? What is their feedback on this impact metrics?
The most, I think that it's so hard to talk with professionals and that professionals doesn't have any idea about their own supply chain. I think that this is the main challenge that we are having right now. Fashion industry, it's a long supply chain, very dark sometimes, and very different cultures from the raw material until point of sale. So I think that this is huge, and of course we can proceed with estimated life cycle assessment. That it's basically our main product, but it's estimated if they don't have where that cotton comes from, or if they don't know which are the specific wet processes involved on that processes. So I think that the first step it's that human consultancy or that human process that we are providing to give knowledge to the fashion brands, to the professionals, in order to understand deeply and step by step, maybe collection by collection, season by season, be able to trace as much as possible their own supply chain. Because the truth is that that they don't are able to trace too much.
Maybe it's so long and so dark for a reason, right? And we need to start peeling layers in that long supply chains. And Jose, now back to you. On the certification area, I heard the other day that there's like over 450 eco-labels in the world. And I guess and for consumers, of course, it's super confusing. And you don't know, well, now that I work in CrowdFarming, I know much better, of course. But you go to the supermarket specifically, and I can imagine in other areas there's a lot more, and you get confused, and you get so many mixed messages, and you don't know which one's right. And I guess from the other side, from the farmer side, it's also a pain, because every time they need to work with a supermarket, for example, they are demanded new certifications just so the supermarket can sell more, right? And not necessarily, I guess those 450 are not as valid and enough. How are we going to get out of this nonsense?
Not anytime soon, I think, but yeah, ideally, now the decision-making power, let's say, is still in the supermarkets. We have been saying that the end consumer have a voice, but it's partially true because the supermarket try to channel what they think that is good, and they select the labels or the certification that are suitable for their own process of supply chain assessments or evaluation of suppliers. And the main problem is the transparency. So it doesn't matter really what the label you see, is that you understand what it is, what is behind, and what is the choice that you give to the consumers. So from the point of view of the farmers, it's a bit different, because the farmers have the concern of seeing how they lose biodiversity, how the fertility of soil is going down, and they want to do something. Even we are arriving to this point in which they want to do something even if it's not recognized by the buyer. So in that situation, this process of regeneration of farming is starting to be kind of successful, in the sense that the farmers see, look, I want to work in a nice environment, in a place in which I have happiness to bring people, in which I'm producing something I am proud of it. And not because the demand of the supermarket is saying to me, I want this day, I want this volume with this quality. Quality is a bit lost. Probably you also have heard about how the nutrients in every fruit and vegetable is 10 times less than 40 years ago. And this is part of the secret as well.
I think this point of clarity is a really important one in this field. And it's one of the big drivers behind our evolution of standards. So as Jose mentioned, Ecosert is one of the kind of certifications that's aligned with B Corp certification. But if you were to truly understand like what it takes to become a B Corp, like I'd need 15 minutes minimum to explain like the entire process. And a lot of you who've gone through it kind of know and have been through the pain. But one of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten in the past few years is, how do you simplify like what it means to be a good business across the board? So what are the like non-negotiables that every business should have? So that's one of the things that's fed into this process for us. Of currently the certification process is, scoring mechanism, over 200 questions that you get asked. And, while there's 5 impact areas, the scoring is flexible. So a business might perform better in the environment, but, might have a lot more work to do in how they treat their workers, for example. But what we're moving towards is having a set of non-negotiables across key topics. So human rights, fair wages, climate action, circularity, and trying to kind of like standardize that a bit more. And I think that's where you're seeing legislation move to as well.
And how do you draw those red lines on this is good, this is bad? Because I guess this is a difficult one, and I know for regenerative agriculture you've been meeting with a lot of different key stakeholders on this matter, but it's difficult to draw this, okay, here I set the bar, because we see a justification for almost everything. No, I do this because I need to, because almost no one tells you, I don't care, so this is why I do this. Like, you see, so you can dilute the limits until you're again in the starting point, that I guess it's what happened kind of with organic, that you started with a very strict set of standards, and then to fit more people in, to get more people in the movement, you start diluting the limits a bit more. So how do you draw these red lines? It's about meeting with a lot of different stakeholders, and how does this happen?
Well, at some point there are, I would say, two labels. One is to decide what are the, let's say, the chaos of the process, a thing that you don't want to see. But it's very important what is the approach that you give to that issue. We have some standards in the past that they were, especially in origin countries with production of tropical fruits, for instance. Every time you found a potential case of child labor, you were saying, okay, certification is finished, go home, bye. And then the process is there, no resolution of the problem. The children will come again the next day with a machete to cut the weeds. The decision is, are we acting, the standards have for good or for bad, the revision process every 5 years, every 7 years, and they reflect, they make some self-criticism and arrive to this point, are we changing something with this or not? And then you see the next version, again, the child labor point is there, but then it is requested a resolution methodology to assess and address the issue and to mitigate it and avoid recurrence. That is one of the processes. The second process is at the critical committees. We have, for instance, in Ecosert, an extremely critical committee. You can come with a new, the 451 standard, you go, hey, a new standard for whatever, and there is a committee say, okay, what are we winning with this? Who are we benefiting?
This is inside Ecosert.
It's about the law, is exigent enough, and then there is a decision. They say we start to work with this set of criteria if we see that we have an added value. But following the same rationale, we discarded a lot, and we're trying to be a bit exigent as much as we can.
I'm going to finish because I know we're running out of time with a question, and then I'll open it to the rest because I guess here we'll have quite a few questions. What is the impact you were willing to see with this label? And a bit towards the question that Gonzalo had before to Alessio, like 2050, when we get there, what happens next? When you get the certification, what happens next? And you have already, José, introduced it a bit, is we need change. This is not, the goal is not to have the certification, because in that case, if the supermarket is asking for it, then I'm a bit of a mercenary. Like, if I don't believe it, when it gets hard, I'm like, I'm out of here. But what is behind that little sticker we see in different places, or those metrics, and being able to say how cool is Infinite Athletics or EcoAlf, that I can see the impact? What is the ultimate purpose of having this information shown to the consumer?
Well, we are not a certificate. Actually, we don't trust that much in terms of certificates, even we are a B Corp company. But just on the textile industry, I think that there are more than 400 certificates. Each one covers a specific part of each stage, and it's a bit mess. And I think that's maybe not clear enough, and big business as well in terms of money. So I'm not a big fan of certificates. But what we are trying to do is to explain the meaning of that certificate, or the good actions, or the best practices that the brand can provide, and explain to the final customers, okay, how many hands has been involved on that product, how many kilometers that product travel around the world, which are the impacts in terms of water scarcity, eutrophication, global warming, or abiotic depletion, that it's in terms of environmental impacts. Also, we are able to provide some scoring and to measure the circularity, but our next goal for the next years will be to provide as well the social impacts per each product, and also the economics, and help the customers to understand the real cost about any decisions when you wanted to buy one garment rather than the other one.
Well, do you want to? No, maybe it's throwing stones on my own roof, but certification may not be the solution. But I do believe on the third-party assessment. So the independency of somebody going to assess based on concrete criteria, what is the status of whatever topic. In our case, mostly is the pillars of sustainability, good agricultural practices, social issues, environmental issues. I think it's important to give the power to the one deciding. In this case today, as we said before, is the supermarkets, but we can pass the same responsibility to the consumers. And for me, the ideal scenario will be something in which you go to a farm and you make an assessment on these 3 pillars and you give a score to the farmer and they say, look, you are very good on farming, you are 60% on social, you are 75% in environmental. And you as a consumer or the supermarket can say, I'm going to buy this product because I'm fine with the 60% social. We need to define red lines because it's, I'm 60%, but I'm doing forced labor and child labor and I'm cutting trees for deforestation, so it's not valid. But I will say that it would be good to pass this information and responsibility. It can be a purchasing decision for the buyers.
And I think for us, similarly to José, I don't think certification alone solves everything, but what we'd like to say is it's about more than the certification, it's this movement of continuous improvement. So at an individual company level, what becoming certified helps a company do, and when they change their legal articles as well, is really embed purpose into their organization and look at how their directors are now being accountable to hit not just profits, but to improve their social and environmental performance and kind of work towards improving that for their next recertification, and also because they're truly committed to that. But I think what's most interesting is then what you see at a collaborative level. So not just individual companies looking to transform themselves, but how they can then work together to transform industries. So we're seeing that in the beauty industry, for example. There's a B Corp beauty coalition with more than 50 B Corps who historically are competitors, but they're actually coming together to tackle key challenges in the beauty industry. And then at an even more macro level, how do you change legislation and advocate for more stakeholder governance and things like that? So we hope to create this ripple effect starting with the companies, because at the end of the day, we're not trying to certify every company in the world, but trying to get more companies to behave in this way, I guess.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open to two questions, and they had to be addressed specifically to one person. I'm sorry, I'm acting as a teacher or as a professor, but we have limited time. So, does someone have a question? Julia and Antonio? Someone else? No? Marianne? Okay. And they have to be addressed to one person specifically, please.
Okay, so you mentioned that some brands are doing their sustainability metrics analysis, but they are not even communicating it. And at the same time, we see brands that have certifications like B Corp that communicate it so well that their own certifier is under scrutiny because of that. So my question is to one of you, you will decide what is the importance of communicating this type of certifications, and at the same time, how can it be done without sounding like unfounded claims?
Well, I think that it's important to communicate, but it's very different what it's doing B Corp. That B Corp is about the full company, and I think that it's a huge work to be part as B Corp, and it's completely different. What we are doing is analyze each specific product, so it's nothing to see which are the impacts for I don't know, sneakers rather than a jacket or a single T-shirt. So it's very depends. I mean, it's completely different, and the first step is to understand. Which is in our case, the first step it's to understand which are the impacts behind, and being knowledge and be commitment and conscious about your own supply chain. And for me, this is worth it, because otherwise they don't know about their own supply chain. So it's a bit different. And in terms of greenwashing, I completely agree. There are a lot of claims that it's 100% greenwashing. It's important, again, just to trace all the data that they are sharing as well.
The key thing. Many times not many times, but frequently when we find issues, the most difficult part, and this is what we translate to the auditors during the trainings, is leave the place 100% sure that what you are saying in the report is true. So take as many samples, talk to as many people as you need for you to be sure that that farm is in compliance. Because if it's not in compliance, you give the certificate later, you are jeopardizing credibility. And this is the major problem for us. So we have a commitment. We are 1 or 2, 3 days in the farm every year, and we have the commitment together with the farmer. You say you do this every day, I confirm in this visit, and then we carry both the responsibility of what is written in the certificate. It's your name and my name. So that's the most important thing for us. Then you need to have credible traceability systems in place, but with what we have so far, we don't need to go that much in that level of technology or innovation to solve the issues. Yeah.
How far you think we are of, let's say, making this auditing information public, as it is, for example, the P&L statement of a company? I mean, to a certain level of sales of a company, how far do you think we are of making this information being available for people, as financial information is?
I mean, from a B Corp perspective, that's part of the certification of like making your assessment transparent, especially for larger companies. There's increased transparency. So for some companies, you can see the general score per kind of impact area. And for larger companies, they have to disclose their entire assessment, and then also any kind of like risk-related disclosures. So if they've had any issues that have been flagged and they've had to like remediate or introduce mitigations, all of that is available on their public profile.
In our case, we are based on the last recommendations from European Commissions. Today it's recommendations, but in few months will be some legislation specific in terms of textiles about which are the specific information that the labels need to add, and it's the recommendations that we are following.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Next we can do over dinner. Thank you very much.
Thank you.